Welcome to the Innovation Brief, the podcast where we have real conversations with leaders driving meaningful change across diverse sectors. I'm Gabriella Matic.
And I'm Gabby Hernandez. Each episode, we bring you insights from innovators who are shaping the future with bold ideas, fresh perspectives, and transformative work.
Today, we're joined by Pina, who leads digitization for sustainability at Siemens Digital Industries Software. She works with global companies across aerospace, automotive, manufacturing, and medical technology to help them use digital tools to improve performance while reducing environmental impact.
Pina has spent the past 8 years scaling industrial solutions inside large enterprises, combining deep technical expertise with a strong focus on commercial results. Before her current role, she gained cross-industry experience at Siemens and Volkswagen, giving her a unique view into how transformation actually happens inside complex organizations.
She also holds a master's in sustainable engineering, is a recognized keynote speaker on industrial transformation, serves as an adjunct professor, advises startups, and is a founding member of the Sustainability Circle, a global community of sustainability leaders.
Whether you're leading a company, building new capabilities, or thinking about how digital transformation and sustainability come together in the real world, this conversation will give you practical insight and fresh perspectives.
Welcome to the podcast, Pina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pina, let's start with you. Can you please tell us about yourself and how you found your way into this kind of work?
Yes, sure. And I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible. It's been a journey. So I started out, as you rightly said in your intro, in industrial engineering, focused in my master's on sustainable engineering, which was just emerging, frankly, at that time. And then took the first steps in the industry in R&D organizations. So really entrenched into how complex industrial products are made and how they go from an idea to actual cars, electrical appliances, energy utilities that are up and running on the road or in the field. So that was basically the first part of my industrial journey. And I learned so much in that time, especially how digitization in every aspect of a product development process, especially in the core R&D fields, is essential to bringing complex ideas into life, especially under the strains and multi-criteria constraints that these teams operate under. So that then led me to make the step towards the core of industrial software, which is a branch of the Siemens Corporation. So Siemens Industries Software, that's where I've been the last almost 7.5 years. And really going from engagement management, implementing the products in the field with various different companies that we've worked with. So really seeing from the ground up what it means to enable these teams who use these capabilities every day and how it empowers their daily work. And then moving into and building up, frankly, what became an ever more demanded domain, which is how can we apply these digital capabilities, digital twins, everything that we see in that industrial software stack to the sustainability transformation. And that really, it has been an upward journey, taking this domain, this team, building it from really zero to it's more than one now, we can say. Yes, and it's just growing.
That's amazing. That sounds like some amazing progress as well throughout your work with Siemens and your role. I'd love to dig into the kind of practicalities of what you're working on day to day. So, maybe you can describe a typical day for you right now. And, particularly if we think about some of the corporate leaders we've worked with or some research that shows that, when senior innovators spend their time on innovation and then transformation and digitization, oftentimes it's not really that practical work. It's more the internal alignment and translation across functions that is a real time drain. Is that similar for you, or has Siemens maybe found ways to reduce that friction?
So first of all, I don't think I can say that there is like the one typical day for me, because it's so varied, and which is something that I love. And it just also speaks to the dynamism really that this field is inherent to. So of course, digital transformation is not a new topic in and of itself, but in the depth of how we operationalize it and how we integrate it really into the core processes is still a field where I feel we are still learning how to fully capitalize on what's possible. And of course, it's gotten a very big boost and a new perspective where we are asking ourselves at every step, how are AI capabilities able to boost what I'm doing here, right? So that really speaks to, I think, the field that I'm in today and the way of working. So translating, as you rightly said, setting the targets is a comprehensive task in and of itself. And here, even I feel we still have to do the exercise. And this is where I also see the maturity of companies, seeing how integrated they are looking into sustainability in relation to and in concert with other business objectives, right? So this is something where I see that makes the most differentiation. And to your question, how have we followed this? This is where I saw at Siemens a big shift being made. Once we understood how we integrate and comprehensively understand not only what the targets of sustainability we want to pursue, but crucially how they interrelate and determine other business objectives that we have, right? Growing profitably, I think that's a very top of mind today. The regulatory pressure we're under, that is also a super dynamic field, especially when you're sitting in the heart of Europe. Then we want to introduce new products. We want to go into new markets, expand our ongoing business. And where I've seen us make a huge step change really is once we took a comprehensive understanding from a systems perspective on how these interrelations are, and then also being able to translate that into what does that mean for our processes, for our data, the data layer, and for the systems layer. So which capabilities do we need in all of the domains that contribute and come together and converge for us to be able to realize all the goals, and sustainability being one of many. And then crucially understanding what capability at which maturity do I need where. And for that is something that, especially when we're looking now towards AI, that's something that that most of my conversations today center around. So this exact translation from the target picture, interrelations, having a systemic, holistic view is something that is a big undertaking to get to that. Are these interrelations supporting of each other, contradicting, synergies, and then translating it into what capabilities do we need where? And crucially, through that point today, very top of mind, what sits at the sweet spot of where AI can be the answer to the big questions that we have.
That's a really great point, and it kind of leads perfectly into our next question, which kind of touches on, you work at this intersection of digitalization and sustainability. So I guess our question is kind of twofold. So one, why do you think digitalization has become such an important lever for sustainability, especially in, heavier, large impact industries? And what kind of leadership is actually required today to successfully drive, both digital and sustainability transformation?
Yeah. And I mean, big questions in and of itself, right? So to your first question, I think simply also from the learning curve that we went through here, we started out with people being very enthusiastic about the topic of sustainability, taking it to heart, stomping great projects out of the ground, but it was more like a grassroots initiative where a lot of people were doing great things, but the big question was how far and how fast are we getting towards the goals that we are setting ourselves, right? And I think even just to be able to answer that question, that's where a data-driven approach comes in, right? This is only something that you can answer confidently if you ground your decision-making in data. And that's, of course, where the interlock to the digital transformation comes in. So that's something where, our head of sustainability has a finance background. So it's very intuitive and no second nature to her that every decision that we're making needs to be grounded and be able to quantify and qualify and ground in data. So having this comprehensive data-driven approach and simply taking this also from in hindsight, right? Big decisions, but how do we standardize how we calculate? Having comprehensive models, standardizing, having consistency, having a centralized governance, how we can determine what is the impact of every measure that we're having, how material is every project to our overarching goal, and what is the timeline that is needed to realize the impact that we want to have and realize with it. So it boils down to seemingly simple questions, but that's exactly where the intersection of both digitization and sustainability lies. So for me, it's always the interlock. We need that digital backbone, those digital connectivity, the digital nervous system, if we want, across not only our internal organization, but crucially across the value chain, to not only be able to have a comprehensive transparency to gain that understanding, but crucially, and that's where I've also seen us making a big step change, is understanding where decisions that are made in one part of the organization, let's say R&D, trickle down and have cause effect chains to other parts of the organization that determine other parts of the product lifecycle, be that in procurement, be that in supply chain, be that in manufacturing. And having that comprehensive understanding also then again lets us take decisions on a comprehensive level that lead and really give us the results that we need to hit our targets in time.
That makes a lot of sense. Maybe hearing you talk about the structure and kind of how much you try to stay on top of the data and really make these informed decisions. I wonder if there's ever a tension between those two, I guess, timelines, because digital infrastructure itself obviously has a significant carbon footprint sometimes. And how do you potentially navigate that internally? I don't know whether it's come up or not, but it's just struck me while you were talking, whether that was something that is a topic.
Yes, of course. And it's a very, topical question, candidly, today, right? Where, of course, we see both the opportunities that I'm assuming you're referring to the footprint that we're talking about of the AI stack. So it's a balance here of understanding what the footprint of the technology is. And frankly, we need to talk, it's one technology we employ to realize and bring the products to life that we build, right? But what's crucial, and I think this is where actually the field of sustainability has served not only that field, but in general decision-making in a complex and dynamic and ambiguous environment, right, is really taking this approach of materiality, right? Having this, what is material, right? I mean, we know this from a sustainability standpoint, what is material to my impact, and that following the double materiality approach, that for me has this core approach of where we can find a standardized way of understanding and assessing what technologies, what tools, what systems, what measures that we have both have a footprint, but crucially also, and this is where I see is lacking in the public discourse around AI, what is the handprint, so the positive impact that these technologies can bring at the same time. And very often it's not an either or, but it's a both, right? So of course, your specific question to AI and digital infrastructure in general, yes, it has a footprint, but if we put it in one comprehensive equation, how big is the footprint in relation to the handprint it generates? And I think this is something where we are just in the early days, specifically for AI, in being able to determine. I think we have a more comprehensive understanding of the footprint. That's why we're talking about it so much, right? And that's something that is also taking up a lot of space in the public discourse. But the positive impacts that the technology can generate, right, on so many different levels is, to my assessment today, we are underestimating by orders of magnitude. And frankly, also development. That's something that I see we are also need to zoom out and take this into perspective. So the footprint, both of training the models and crucially also with inference, that's declining. It's getting ever more efficient. So that part of the equation is being minimized, while the positive impact, the handprint, is only growing. And I see us being only at the very, very tip of the hockey stick there. So that for me, first, really crucial to take that holistic perspective and put it in relation to each other. And then understand where's the trajectory, not only today, but where are we heading towards? Because it's developing so fast that by the time we have finished a project or start the new one, the odds and the variables in this equation will have changed dramatically.
Yeah, that's a really, really good perspective. I like that. And yeah, it strikes me as a good way to point ourselves into the direction of thinking about how can we do more good with this rather than the other. Both are important, but yeah, I like the way you just described that. And you've obviously worked across many large organizations and you've learned a lot about what actually drives potentially that sort of change and transformation in those companies. Can you share a bit of that experience? You know, when companies talk about innovation today, what do you think is potentially often misunderstood and how have you seen it look like in reality?
So first, I think that's also changed and is also different from the kinds of organizations I've worked at. But what I can say is that innovation is often confused with optimization. So most companies think of like, I'm adding this new tool, whether it's AI, whether it's digital, whether it's automation, to the old process, and then we call it innovation, right? But that's not in the core nature or the core character of what innovation really is. And then what I've also seen is that there's often this paradox. So in industrial engineering, we've seen this play out quite clearly. So in the past 30 years, I've really put this into perspective. We have seen tool capabilities increase by 1,000-fold, but at the same time, the cycle time has only improved by 30%. So I think that also puts into perspective, we have focused very much on the tool chain, giving the people who work in these organizations ever powerful tools. We've also worked at optimizing the processes, right, that connect teams and span responsibilities. But overall, I think we're at a point where we've reached the ceiling of what we are able to optimize the status quo for. So companies think that, okay, if I upgrade my software, if AI here, if I hire lots of data scientists, this will transform what I'm doing. But I think it's a much more structural topic than we might realize at first glance. And this is also where I see the companies who are able to transform are really the ones, it requires them to ask, what if we build the entire organization that contributes to what we want to achieve here from scratch? Just being able to take that perspective, zoom out, what is it with the capabilities that we have available to us today technologically? From first principles, how would this look like? And that's a perspective that I see very few, frankly, already taking today. But the ones that do, they are able to really create breakthrough innovation, radical innovation, rather than this ever-spanning loop of incremental improvements. So I think this is more the willingness of asking this hard question of, is the current operating model still up to the task? And being able to and willing to, and this takes courage and stamina and grit, to rethink that from first principles and rebuild it with the capabilities for the performance that is possible today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think if you say, or when you say rebuilding, I guess, structures and rebuilding models of how the business is done and how new products are built, a couple of really crucial elements of that within an organization will probably be talent and culture. How do you think companies should think about those two things if they really want to innovate at scale rather than, just stay in the status quo and kind of fade away.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely cannot agree more that talent and culture, and also how we understand talent and culture, I think, and how we understand how to employ and nurture both is very crucial. So I see that one thing that differentiates organizations that I've seen succeed or are succeeding is this having the culture of playing to win rather than playing not to lose. And I think this is something, once you've taken up this lens and this perspective, just looking into how companies act today, this is something that you can very tangibly see. Are companies with the back against the wall and playing not to lose? Or do they have this culture of playing to win? Are they empowering their people to take risks, to take new paths, right? So that's something that I see, especially the environment that we're in today, that this is required. Having a entrepreneurial ownership mindset, a growth mindset that spans into the culture and is lived through the culture, where this is also nurtured, where failure is not just accepted, but seen as a learning curve and also propagated and encouraged. I think that's something that really differentiates from a cultural perspective, but crucially to your question on talents, that also requires people who have that personality to live that kind of culture. I think that's something that maybe larger organizations sometimes feel that they can mold their people into this. I think it's much more encouraging the side of people in them, but also crucially having the right balance of the creatives, the disruptors, but also crucially the people who can run a fast and steady operation that can have the operational resources and confidence to run on a daily business.
That's a really great point. And, one of the things, so as we kind of mentioned earlier, is that you are actually one of the founding members of the Sustainability Circle, which brings together people that are primarily, sustainability leaders. But as you with your own work has demonstrated, that kind of wear different hats, have different backgrounds and experiences, and also are taking a much more with evolving regulations and policies and requirements to take that more strategic leadership kind of role. And I guess what I would like to know is, what role do networks or communities like the one that you are a founding member of, the Sustainability Circle, play in terms of helping to change, that kind of culture and reinforce that mindset shift that organizations kind of need?
I think that's something that I frankly realized very early in taking on the responsibility for building the domain of sustainability in a established part of the business. And frankly, we needed to also be looking into, okay, we are bringing a new topic to an existing field in existing industries. And there is a very clear timeline behind that, and that really unites all sustainability leaders. So it's no coincidence, of course, that at least in Europe, there's the milestones are 2030, 2050, and maybe some in between. But there's a very unifying timeline and also magnitude and energy behind that. So I think the learning curve that we all went through, and then this resonated with me and all the people that I get to meet and exchange and work with in the sustainability circle, is that we're all on the same boat here. Everyone understands this. This rising tide lifts all boat mindset is very much not only felt, but lived in this kind of community. So we all draw so much from just sharing the everyday experiences. Like, okay, there's this new regulation. How are you tackling this? How are you getting your suppliers to share product carbon footprints with you, right? There's very tangible problems that we all face. We all have the same hurdles, often, both internally with our ecosystem. And I think what's unique in this space of sustainability specifically is this understanding we are only benefiting between each other if we have this safe space to exchange on often very hard questions to help each of us drive the topic that is core to the impact that we want to have and has helped so many of us in our daily business. So yes, it's been transformative to how not only I have been able to realize building the sustainability domain at Siemens, but I know from all the peers that I have in that sustainability circle that they're just as well participating from that.
I guess they'd be really love to know, because you kind of touched on it a bit earlier, right? There's sustainability, and whilst there's increasing kind of knowledge or emphasis on the importance, right, and the linkages with the actual business impacts externally, as well as how it on the environment, on society, on the economy, and reverse. There's sustainability as its own kind of department, or you'll have their report and everything, which kind of oftentimes sits separately from commercial strategy and operations on a day-to-day. And as someone that kind of sits in that middle, especially in terms of the sustainability side and digitalization initiatives, could you maybe share an example of a successful initiative where you were able to actually kind of bring those two together to be like, look, this is of commercial interest for the company, but also properly links in the sustainability strategy of the company?
This ties very much back into what I was sharing earlier on what I've seen, why we've been able to achieve the targets at Siemens, often also before the time milestones that we are set ourselves, is really this not having us as a bolted on satellite kind of organization that sits somewhere and gets on everybody's nerves because they have to do the report again, right? But really integrating it into the core of decision making, be that on top level. What is the overall strategy that we have, breaking this down? And this again comes back to this, how well do we see and understand where sustainability is a synergy towards competitive advantage, right? So that's a mindset shift that I see what's, again, created a step change here for us at Siemens. We have last year also not only set ourselves decarbonization targets, so reducing our footprint, but we actually have a quantified target now for our handprint by 2030, 1,000 megatons. And that really created this shift towards the understanding in every part of the organization, our technology helps our customers avoid emissions and reduce their footprint. So, and this has been a crucial lever to taking this from, well, it's a pain of reporting exercises, and rather it's a strategic lever to create new products, have a differentiation in the market, open up new market share, right? Also, crucially, new business models. And having that lens, being able to follow that, being able to break that down, right? And to your point, a specific example just from our own operations is we have a company-wide eco-design guideline that determines what eco-designs mean for us. It has very clear metrics that all the units need to follow. Product managers have to say, this is the status quo. These are how I'm going to hit these metrics with a next generation or a new product. Now, you can intuitively understand that we don't have tons of sustainability experts in all of the R&D domains that can assess and make decisions towards how do we actually meet these requirements. And this is where we brought in the comprehensive tool chain, both from, okay, this is the requirements that are determined in our own eco-design guideline, which of course takes the regulatory requirements that we fall under into consideration. But how do they crucially translate to specific products and to the decision-making that responsibles in the product design process need to take? And how do they balance off with the performance, the quality, the cost, all the classical design criteria? And this is where we brought together not only integrating the eco-design requirements into the classical requirements management, both process and systems. So again, here, not bolting on something new, right? Where simply like people working on it had to switch to a different software, but integrating it to the systems and processes they already work with. And then taking actually the next step. And this is where I saw, or we are still seeing the biggest help that these systems generate is in the design modeling, in CAD, in CAE, how design engineers are empowered to integrate sustainability metrics into the multifold decision-making optimization complexes. So, I mean, for these systems, they're just other metrics. They have different units. They can work with them just as well as they work with cost, yield strength, or kilograms. And that's what we have actually been leveraging. And we're now taking this to the next step, where it's not just, okay, we're making it transparent what decisions have which implication in the context of all of the optimization criteria, including eco-design, but actually making design suggestions, right? Going into, this is a lot where AI-powered intelligence comes in, that understands all the complex trade-off effects. What if I change the material here? What does that mean for manufacturability? What does it mean for sourcing? I mean, the AI models that we have powering this today, they can put all of this into relation. They can handle all the complexity that not only sits in one decision, but crucially can have this cause and effect chain analysis that also translates to down the line. So long answer, but I think this really heads down to sustainability is complex, and to be able to operationalize it effectively, tapping into the full power again of the technological capabilities that we have today is, frankly, to my mind, the only way we are able to hit the timelines that we are setting ourselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, when you say timelines as well, when we talk about innovation or digital transformation, there is always this underlying pressure for speed, to actually, not stay behind the curve. We talked about AI, all of that stuff. And I guess there is a balance, right, between speed and responsibility, particularly when it comes to industries that are safety critical, regulatory heavy, or have really long product life cycles. So what's your kind of quick instinct of how to balance that as part of a daily reality for someone in a role like yours?
First of all, understanding and having this realization that it's not an either or, and that we can achieve both with, again, grounding it into a data-driven approach and having, crucially, that digital thread, that digital backbone and the connectivity across the full value chain. And that, again, translates to not only internally, but crucially also the full ecosystem that we have with suppliers, with partners, with our customers. So here, I mean, just being able to capture what is everything that's required of me, being able to translate and relate it to my products in the different markets that they are designed to enter into. And then having a comprehensive, we call that like auditable traceability in the systems that can tell me exactly this product variant in this country needs to comply to XYZ regulations. And these are the product features that have been tested in XYZ format that make it sure we are compliant. Now, to your question of speed, I mean, simply being able to do that assessment and the analysis is, again, it's super complex. Just being able to understand the interrelations between all of the different requirements in compliance that need to be adhered to. AI has so many upsides here, and specifically on the speed and comprehensiveness in which we are able to do these kinds of assessments, and then having that relation to the products. I mean, having the systems of record where we can not only put this into relation to the products, but also crucially create that traceability, having the documentation that we can actually show this is how we are compliant. So it's not an either or, it's a both. And having the understanding this and understanding which system capabilities enable that, to me, is the answer to this question.
On a personal level, there's a lot happening right now in the innovation space, in the sustainability space, just globally in general. There's a lot happening. Just for you personally, what is the most, exciting opportunity that you think that we're facing right now, whether it be in your industry? Is there, say, a new approach or new innovation, something that's getting you really excited at the moment that you think other leaders should be aware of?
I mean, first of all, I love the question. I think that that's something that goes through my head every single day. What I'm most curious and truly obsessed and excited about right now is really how the technological inflections that we have. I mean, with AI today, and I really closely look at applying all the great advancements that we basically, I mean, there's news every single day coming out. The models are getting more powerful. They can now understand the physical world, right? I think that has been like a step change inflection in and of itself. We now have comprehensive models that not only understand like us talking, video, text, those kinds of modalities, but crucially the modalities that the industry works in, that the physical is governed by the physical world. And then understanding, okay, having this convergence of these technologies with the systems that we have today, with our expertise, with the domain know-how, with all the data that we have accumulated in industry, where 80% fairly today we are not using, and applying that to how can we generate the next generation of industrial products that serve us today, that go beyond human imagination. I think that's the barrier that I see and the inflection point that's so fascinating to me, because these systems today, right, they can learn not only through imitating how we as humans have approached and are approaching solving problems, but we can give them, they can understand the constraints, like the environment that the solution needs to live in. And then through exploration learning, craft that solution for it that is not guarded by or constrained by our human understanding of what the real world looks like or how to best solve for this problem. And I think that's, for me, the first point that I see is so fascinating in and of itself, and that's agnostic for any industry. I mean, we've seen the first approaches here in pharma, in biology, so what we're basically, and now translating that to the physical world, and then taking the next step and saying, okay, if we understand that this is technologically possible, what does it mean for how, again, businesses are structured, or how do we best structure and organize companies today and prepare them for the day after, like tomorrow, to be able to fully tap into that technological capability, right? I think that's something that I'm personally still wrapping my head around, like what would that look like? I think that's very individual to different industries, but intuitively for me, it means, again, looking at organizations from first principles, taking this is the cutting edge of this frontier, not only today, but also taking into account where we are heading, and then working from there. How do we set up these kinds of organizations to fully leverage these capabilities?
Yes, well, there is a lot of exciting stuff coming at us, I think. So we almost have to have another chat like this, let's say in a year's time, and revisit what our assumptions were and what actually happened in reality. Let's wrap it up with a last kind of twofold question. One is, we like to ask our guests about any other innovation, or in your case also sustainability leaders, that might have influenced your thinking, that have inspired you. So now is the time to give someone a shout out and kind of share a little bit about what's interesting around what they're working on. And then back to you, what's next for you and your team? How can listeners connect and learn more about your work?
First of all, the realm of people I'm inspired by is so vast. So it's very hard to pick just one. But I think the one that I would start with is Ursula Burns. She was like Xerox and she advised, and basically she really lived this innovator's dilemma firsthand. So she saw at Xerox that had invented the future, but then couldn't really commercialize it. So then she was very thoughtful about like how large organizations should think about disruption. That's definitely one that I find super inspiring to see, like the learnings she took from that and how she's applied it after. Then I would say I'm very fascinated by how Satya Nadella is also transforming Microsoft and the way he's been able to take this, I mean, it's hard to say legacy company, speaking from Siemens, but a company that had a history, a legacy in a certain field, and transforming that completely and willing to do this over and over again successfully, right? And I think reinventing yourself, your business models, the market that you serve is something that is crucial in an environment that is so dynamic and ever-changing. Last one that I would highlight is Jensen Huang. I mean, the history of NVIDIA is just astounding and the trajectory he's put the company on. But crucially, I find also the way he runs his organizations. He's been able to keep this large organization with such an entrepreneurial spirit so that all the people that I talk to and learn from how they operate, it's really it's just an unparalleled drive and clarity on mission that is very inspiring to me.
Thank you so much again, Pina, for joining us. It's been a great conversation, and we love the approach that that you've taken on, like this pragmatic, innovative, forward-thinking kind of approach, but also that commitment, to sustainability in your work and kind of highlighting what you and your team are doing. So thank you. And that's a wrap on this episode of the Innovation Brief.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to Innovation Brief and leave us a review. It helps other innovation leaders and curious minds discover the show. This has been the Innovation Brief. I'm Gabriella Matic.
And I'm Gabby Hernandez. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time with another inspiring conversation.